Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So my friend and I were in our second year of college together, and we're roommates. We were both transfers and going into senior year and have been renting an apartment for the past year. The two of us had lived with 3 other people the first year, but they graduated and moved out. The apartment had 2 rooms and a den with double doors that could be used for 1 person. We had 2 people in each room and 1 in the den. We needed to find people to replace our old housemates. And my friend knew a couple people who were living together and wanted to move to a new place together. She talked to them and set everything up before summer, so that way, during the fall, we would already have everything figured out. We signed a lease before summer vacation and everything seemed fine. One girl wanted to rent out the big room to herself and would pay full price for it. Let's call her Shireen. The other one would live in a den who I will call Carrie. There would only be 4 of us instead of 5 the coming year, which we were looking forward to. However, over the summer, Shireen started having second thoughts about living with Carrie. Apparently, while living together, they'd had some issues. Shireen called my friend and I and told us that apparently Carrie had pushed her down the stairs while they were living together, and she bought pepper spray and a taser just in case. According to Shireen, one night they thought they heard someone trying to break into their apartment and were standing at the top of the stairs listening. When Carrie told Shireen to go check it out, Shireen didn't want to go, so Carrie pushed her and Shireen fell down the stairs. We asked Carrie about this, but she said that while they heard suspicious activity and called the police, she never pushed Shireen down the stairs. My friend and I didn't know what to believe and ultimately told Shireen she'd have to work it out, since she was the one having doubts. We also told her that if she changed her mind, we'd need at least a month's notice. Shireen decided she still wanted to live with us and was okay living with the other girl, so we thought it was fine. Summer passes and fall arrives. Shireen is moving in. Carrie is planning on moving in a few days later. However, Shireen brings someone over to the apartment and starts showing her around. She apparently wanted a roommate who wanted us to sign the new person onto our lease with an addendum, but she hadn't talked to us about it before. Apparently, she still didn't feel safe with Carrie around and said she'd feel safer with a roommate. She told her potential roommate she hadn't known she'd be living with Carrie, even though the 4 of us had signed the addendum to put them both on a lease at the same time. My friend and I thought things were getting weird at this point and started feeling concerned. Unfortunately, our lease was going to expire soon and we needed to sign the lease renewal in a few days. And we couldn't get an addendum to sign the new person on until we signed the lease renewal. My friend and I had let Shireen and Carrie know this in advance and they had agreed beforehand to sign it. If we didn't sign it in time, we would have to start an entirely new lease, and the price would go up a lot, which we couldn't afford. So, if we didn't sign our new lease agreement in time, we would all have to find another place to live. Since school was about to start, it would have been hard to find another place to live so quickly. This wouldn't have been an issue, but then Shireen was afraid that Carrie wouldn't sign the new person onto the lease, and said she wouldn't sign the lease renewal if we didn't add her roommate first. We got pissed because she had never even asked us if we were okay with living with one more person, or let us know beforehand. And now she was risking everyone's place to try and make us sign someone we'd never met onto the lease. We told Shireen we couldn't sign her roommates on before renewing the lease since we had to renew it so soon, which was the apartment's rules. She kept making more demands and told us that if we didn't do what she wanted, then she wouldn't sign the lease renewal and we'd be all without a place to live. She wanted me to observe a verbal agreement as a third-party person between her and Carrie, where Carrie would agree to sign the new person onto the lease after we signed the lease renewal. I told her I wasn't comfortable with this and this is where the fun starts. Carrie seemed nice so far, and my friend and I were really uncomfortable with how Shireen was acting. She continued to move all of her stuff in while telling us her conditions. We wouldn't agree to any of them. not only because there was no way to meet them under the rules of our apartment complex, but also because we weren't going to let this girl control us like that and make us live with someone we didn't know if we wanted to live with. However, Shireen then came up with a clever idea. She said that we could sign her off of the lease with an addendum, then sign a lease renewal with Carrie, and then sign her and her roommate back onto the lease. That way she would have no chance of getting stuck on a lease without a roommate. My friend and I told her that we agreed to this and told Carrie as well, who also agreed. My friend and I went to the office to let them know, so they wrote the addendum to take Shireen off of the lease. Everyone in the apartment had to sign it in order for it to be valid. My friend, Carrie, and I signed it. I waited for Shireen to sign it after telling her it was ready. She went downstairs and signed herself off of the lease. After this, she came back up and my friend and I informed her that we would not be signing her back onto the lease. She got really upset and she told us that if we didn't want to live with her, she would have signed herself off anyways. But we didn't believe her. She started crying and told us that she had just finished setting up her desk, but we didn't care. She had threatened 3 other people's security and place to live, as well as her potential roommates. She went outside and slammed the door. My friend and I was relieved it was over and that we wouldn't be losing our apartment. We just needed to find someone and that we wouldn't be losing our apartment. We just needed to find someone to take her place. Shireen came back in with a smug look on her face and told me she had her mom on the phone and her mom wanted to talk to one of us. I took the phone and put it on speaker while my friend listened. Carrie went to her space and closed the door. When I answered the phone, Shireen's mom went off on me. She called me a jerk and told me to go to hell. I stayed calm and told her that I stood by the decision we made. She told me to go to hell several more times. Then she told me Shireen had nowhere to go and I didn't give a rat crap. I told her she was right. I didn't. Her mom told me to go to hell one more time and hung up. I gave the phone back to Shireen, who seemed surprised that I wasn't intimidated. She whispered sorry as I gave her phone back to her. Then she went to her room to take her stuff apart and start packing. Since we paid the lease in advance for our place, as per the apartment's rules, Shireen had paid to stay until the end of the month. So we let her stay until then. This gave her about 5 days to figure something else out. She made it as difficult as possible, but eventually she left. Pretty sure I didn't see her on campus or anything after that. So that was the last time I saw her. The best part is that the girl who was going to be Shireen's roommate still needed a place to stay, so we signed her onto the lease and helped her find a roommate. It was actually a fairly lengthy battle, but in the end, we won our apartment back. Word of advice, don't sign people onto your lease months in advance, even if they will pay for their room while they are not there. People can make a lot of changes in a few months, and if they don't know you, they won't care about screwing you over. My first bit of revenge, which was likely the worst revenge I've ever committed, occurred when I was 14 years old. To understand what happened, I'll start by saying that I was severely bullied back then. It was the 90s and bullying wasn't given the attention it is given these days. I was probably the easiest target in the school. A young girl who didn't like to talk, was 5 feet tall, 152 centimeters, weighed only 68 pounds, around 31 kilograms, and had big glasses. Adding to the problem was that I had Asperger's syndrome, which was considered to be on the autism spectrum back then. I probably only would have attracted more bullies if I carried around a neon sign. My parents knew I was having issues and allowed me to study martial arts, but told me consistently to not fight, to try to get along. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. My grandfather, on the other hand, pushed for me to do something much different and gave a piece of advice that I have carried with me. Don't start the fight, just finish it. Being the typical good girl back then, I tried to follow the rules that my parents set out. The ones that the teachers attempted to enforce, but the bullying never ceases. My pencils were smashed and I was poked with the sharp pieces. My lunches were stolen and eaten in front of me. My books, both textbooks and recreational, were taken and ripped up in front of me. There was even an incident when my shoes were stolen and tossed into a pond that I knew had alligators in it, meaning I walked home without shoes. This continued from elementary school into middle school and finally high school. My few friends were good people who tried to help me but were often targeted as well. Some of them ended up being transferred to other schools when things got too rough. At 14, I will admit that I was numb and no longer reacted the same to the shoving or harassment. The teachers were less than helpful, never leaving their classrooms, and thus never seeing what happened in the halls. One particular day, while attempting to put some of my books into my locker, one of the bullies decided to have some fun and see if I was really small enough to fit in a locker. He came up behind me and started shoving, then attempted to fold me into the locker. One of my friends came up and yelled, trying to make him stop, only for him to push her away, causing her to fall. When I managed to turn around, he had grabbed her and tried to slap her. Something inside of me snapped at that moment because I didn't care about being bruised or hurt. I was just angry. Angry to the point that my numbness was overridden at that moment. I wish I could have seen the surprise on his face when I delivered my first non-sanctioned kick to his side. But when he was facing away from me and fell to the side of my friend, he coughed as he turned to face me, right as my hand grabbed his shirt and my other hand slammed into his nose, breaking it. I was enraged, but the pleasure I felt in that moment when I heard him give a sob of pain caused me to continue to punch the piece of trash. Though I remembered those first two hits perfectly, the ones that followed were mostly lost on me. I didn't aim to do anything other than hurt this person. The boy was double my size but had never expected a tiny girl to fight him, especially since she never had before. I was told later he attempted to fight back, but I was little more than an enraged animal that turned into a violent berserker when he did land a blow. The high school we were at was a multi-level school and our fight took us near a stairwell. My mind cleared in that second, but the anger was still there as I came to a decision. I was going to kill this jerk. On his next attempt to punch me, I moved in sharply and drove my elbow into his side, knocking out his press, then shoved him hard. My anger broke as he began to fall, and I can honestly say that I was afraid as he went rolling down the stairs, knocking into a few people on the way down. The bully wasn't dead at the end of all of this, but he did have a broken nose, a broken collarbone, and a broken arm from his fall down the stairs. I had a number of bruises and a bloody nose as well, though it wasn't broken. My friend did manage to explain what happened, which prevented me from being expelled. I was suspended instead, and the bully was also given a suspension and a free ride to the hospital. My parents were livid at what I'd done and grounded me for an indefinite amount of time, turned into 3 months. My grandfather, on the other hand, pulled me aside and told me, only way to make a brat like that stop is to make the consequences bad enough for him to toe the line. He ain't gonna bother you again. When we were allowed to return to school, the bully's broken arm and collarbone caused him to need not only a cast, but a sling as well. His nose was still large and discolored, causing him to look like a panda or a raccoon. He never bothered me again during the rest of high school, and a lot of the bullying died down around then. For 18 months, I've been working from home, as most of us had. From a work perspective, this has been great. I've been more productive than when I'm in the office, been able to work more flexible hours and have saved a ton of money by not commuting. My workplace had an agreement that those working from home can do whatever hours they want, so long as we were able to answer urgent calls in core hours and we get all our work done. Fair enough as far as I'm concerned. For 16 months, this worked great as above. Then over a few weekends I had to clear out of the house and took pictures of all the items that are in good condition but we no longer want, with a view to give it away to whoever wants it. One day when I'm working from home, I take my lunch break, make a quick sandwich and post the items that I'm giving away on one of those local Facebook free pages. I didn't know it at the time, but one of the managers, called Shambles henceforth from my workplace, was also signed up to that page and he saw my post. He then took it upon himself to go to the owner of the company and tell him that I was slacking off and posting on Facebook during work hours. For context, this wasn't my boss. who was super chill so long as everything was done on time. Nor was he complaining to my boss, but to the owner of the company. We're a big business, so there's a lot of people in the chain of command between me and the owner. And to top it all off, I've been doing a lot of work for Shambles. He'd outsourced the running of the entire projects to me over the last 18 months, all of which I'd executed well and he'd taken ample credit for. And this was the only time in 18 months I posted anything on Facebook, because I never post. So the owner contacted me, and to be fair, he's a decent guy. The conversation went like this: "I've been told you're posting on Facebook during work hours. Just be smart about it. It doesn't look good when colleagues see it." He tells me, "I completely understand, sir. Just so you know, I posted that during my lunch break. I was told you were posting it at noon. The company lunch break is usually 1 to 2. I did, but that's because when I'm home working, I always take my lunch 12 to 1. Okay, I don't have an issue with that. Just keep your head down." Like I said, a decent guy. I wasn't really in trouble and the owner didn't seem to care, but then I started to think, wait, who has gone to the owner with this in the first place? Long story short, a co-worker who was working on site that day heard on a grapevine that Shambles had been complaining to the owner about me and how I'm always on social media when I should be working. I literally only have Facebook and I only use that for Messenger 99% of the time. Cue pity revenge. As I said before, Shambles likes to outsource work to me. I never minded this. The work was varied and it broke the week up. Plus my own boss didn't mind as I always had my work for him done on time. However, I never got recognition for this extra work. For 2 years I managed to sub-department completely on my own because he didn't have time to do it. I didn't get a penny for it, but it was a good group of people and I enjoyed getting experience of management. Well, after this, every time Shambles came up to me with an issue, I would say I was super swamped, but that I'd try to deal with it if I had time. The projects he tried to outsource to me, I immediately rejected, saying that I had a full plate from my actual job. And that sub-department I ran, we will get to that later. Of course, the next couple of months Shambles starts missing his deadlines, issues coming up with existing projects that he hasn't fixed, and employees are complaining that every time they go to him with an issue, it doesn't get resolved. It dawned on me at this point that I've basically been doing this guy's job for him for years. Screw that. I set up a meeting with my boss and put forward my arguments for why I should be promoted, or really why I should have been ages ago. I point to all the projects I've successfully run as well as a sub-department I've managed for 2 years. He completely agrees and says he will take it to his boss. Now, somehow, I don't know how, but when I go to the next meeting with my boss's boss, Shambles is there too. He is on the same level in the company as my boss's boss. A little phased but not willing to give up, I put my arguments forward to them. Shambles lets me finish, then proceeds to tell me that I don't know enough about our work to manage. I don't have the required people skills, and then he tells me, and this is verbatim, "Besides, people here don't respect you. They respect me. I know I'm a good manager. If you really think about it, you know you wouldn't be." I forget what was said after that, but I was completely destroyed. Boss's boss comes up to me afterwards and tells me that Shambles is annoying. But unfortunately, he's got the approval of the higher-ups, so what he says has too much sway for him to go against him. I tell boss's boss that if that's the way it is, I'm going to look for other employment. He sighs and says, "I don't blame you." Cue bro revenge. During the time it took me to look for and apply to other jobs, I have time to think about how I can get back at Shambles. He's used me for years and is now blocking my promotion. I'd already stopped working on his stuff and his projects were going from bad to worse, but I needed something more. Now this next part could be an entire post on its own, so I bulleted it for brevity. If you want more context, I can write it out later. I am an accredited internal auditor for our quality systems. I ask if I can be assigned a couple of last audits before I leave to help them out. I carry out these audits and use my intimate knowledge of Shambles projects. I find every single issue I can. A number of people also hate Shambles and give me more dirt on him. Someone gives me breakthrough information that Shambles has been forging signatures and bypassing multiple company procedures to make his KBIs look better. I write up the report with tons of evidence attached and send it off. The report gets flagged at the highest level because of what it shows. Shambles get dragged over the coals. I wish I could say the story ends with a Shambles getting fired and having to sell his body on the street for scraps, but obviously using all the connections he has, he keeps his job. I later found out though that he was due a massive promotion, as in catapulted to the top of the company, running whole divisions kind of thing. That never happened though. With his declining numbers as well as a bad audit showing all his shortcomings, he is basically told he'll never progress beyond where he is and that he's lucky to have a job at all. He still works there and I'm told his ego has been taken down a whole washing line worth of pigs. As for me, I'd love to say I got a better job with a massive raise. That's half true. I decided to pursue my dream job. Literally, since I've been a kid, dream job. In a totally different industry. All the experience I had counted in my favor, and although I took a bit of a pay cut, I've never enjoyed work more. Oh, and that sub-department I was running, they knew that when I left, Shambles would take over running them again. So in my last months at the company, I gave them all tutorials on how to search for jobs and pass interviews. I'd worked in recruitment previously. I've heard from a number of them since that they landed better jobs and thanked me in part of it. It may not be the most perfect ending, but I am very happy with it. This is my first time posting here. I've lurked a bit and remembered the story from last year that happened to me during the wrestling post season. So when this happened, I was in 8th grade, I was 5'8" and 150 pounds. I did wrestling in 6th grade, I went to a different sport in 7th grade, resulting in an injury that brought me back to wrestling. I was a decent wrestler, not good but not awful. My wrestling partner was an absolute jerk. He would complain when I did the move right, and when I tried to help him with something, he would not comply. My brother and I have had problems with this kid following us and calling us slurs and names with his other friends, which were equal douches. One day I was carrying my instrument home like any other day I was walking to my dad's. It's a violin and the case is a longer and boxier case. This kid and his other jerks came running towards me and my younger brother. This is how the interaction goes. "Kid, your barrel is hanging out." The douchebag said that. "The hell you're talking about?" I asked irritably. "Keep your AKs concealed, jerk." AK is a gun type, and keep in mind that this is during the time when there were a lot of school shootings and the year before we had trouble with bomb threats and shootings at the school. "This ain't a gun, it's an instrument." "Oh yeah? You're probably keeping mags and ammo in your bag. See, they are pointing out." "Shut up, kid. You probably mistake a pencil for a Glock." He shouts across the street to the other crowd of people. "Hey, look at! This kid is a school shooter." His friend joins the taunting and harassment on the walk home, calling me a school shooter and more about not letting my kind in America. I'm a large mix of French, Native American, Irish, and Canadian, so I look like mutt with tan skin, a large nose, and hair that gets redder when there is more sun for some reason. By this time, my brother ran off because he doesn't bode well with social situations like this. These interactions happen a lot and even happened in the fall before the wrestling season even started. But this interaction crossed the line. The revenge. The plan? Remember how I mentioned I was a wrestler? He was my wrestling partner and talked a lot of smack, and I just didn't want to deal with him. I planned to make him as embarrassed as possible no matter what I had to do. The big state tournament was nearing. If I could make this kid learn, this would be the best way to do it there. He was in my weight class and was not that great of a wrestler, so I prepared for the possibility that I would wrestle him, not using him as a partner but using my friend Jay. He was confused at first, but I told him the plan and he was on board. I practiced with Jay and he was a couple of weight classes above me, and I got better at wrestling in that period, preparing myself for the tournament. The day of the tournament. We got to the high school where this tournament was held. There were a few mats and brackets were being set up as we were warming up. We went into our normal routine and prepared for the usual big tournament spiel. I had checked the brackets and I saw that the douchebag had to lose a match in order for me to be able to wrestle him. He was against a really good kid and obviously lost. And I wrestled my match and lost in order for the plan to come into play. This is a double elimination tournament, so if you lose 2 matches, you are eliminated from the tournament. This was the concise of 8 rounds, and he would be out of the tournament if he lost. Oh, and did I mention that the kid's parents and friends were there? Also putting me down with more slurs and school shooter nonsense. The match. Disclaimer, there is a lot of wrestling terminology and I will answer any questions in the comments. These were 1-1-1 matches, meaning that all of the periods were 1 minute long. In high school and college, the matches are 2-2-2, so only 3 minutes to deal with this kid. In the first period, we were neutral and we didn't score any points on each other. That was our stronghold position and I wasn't surprised. In the second period, he had bottom position and I wasn't fast enough to break him down, so he got the 1 point from escape. We were back in neutral, so nothing else happened. In the third period, I was on bottom, so I did a quick reversal. And now he was on bottom. I got the 2. I rode him out and ended up cradling him for another 3 backs, making the score 5-1. I got him into a bull and chain and turked him for another 3 backs, 8-1. I won the match. I saw his parents scream and throw the flowers they were holding on the ground because their son got dead last in the bracket. I guess they expected him to do good in a big tournament as a relatively new wrestler. He swore at me and kept screaming as I walked the bout sheet to the front desk. Let's just say that he didn't call me a school shooter or a coward French boy again after that. I wonder what people will think about this when he comes up to the high school next year when I'm a sophomore. The background. This took place in a university in the UK about 9 or 10 years ago. I was there on my first year of undergraduate degree, and the subject of my revenge, let's call him Dib, the dubious and incompetent professor, was the sole lecturer for a module that I was taking. Dib was an American professor over in the UK for a couple of years to teach at this university. He wasn't doing the best job, he was often late, refused to answer questions, often used new acronyms or terminology and refused to explain them, and never made his slides or notes available to his students. He would make rude and unprofessional comments about the students when we were not able to answer his questions instantly, even on topics we hadn't yet covered. On one occasion, Dip turned up covered in cuts and bruises and proceeded to give us a third-year lecture about a completely unrelated topic, became angry when this was pointed out, swore at the student, and stormed out of the lecture. Several lectures he attended smelling strongly of cannabis. I was not able to keep my mouth shut about this and had spoken to him about it several times. Usually after lectures when most of the other students had left. I never got anywhere. The tipping point. Completely out of the blue, I get a letter delivered to my dorms, summoning me to a departmental disciplinary hearing later that day. I have absolutely no idea what it's for, but I start grabbing bricks. Time to read up on the university discipline regulations. Boy Scouts' motto is be prepared after all. I turn up at the appointed time and there is another student from Dip's class there with me. Let's call him Jim. Jim's a bit of a witless and we don't particularly get along, at least in part because he's dating my ex. We both look at each other kind of confused. Neither of us knows what's going on. They pull Jim into the office first and I sit down on the chairs in a corridor feeling more nervous as the minutes go on. After about 10 minutes, Jim comes running out of the office sobbing. The door closes behind him and then nothing for another 10. What have I got myself into here? Then it's my turn. I went in and there is 4 people sitting in the office, in a rather intimidating stroke, straight out of a cheesy New Year movie. The blinds are drawn and there is a single lamp on making the room kinda dark. There is a desk in the middle of the room, with 2 people I don't know sat at it and 2 more sat in the far corners, mostly in shadow. One of them is clearly Dip. He's kind of distinctive, 6'2", plays a lot of American football and is pretty beefy. I sit down and ask, what's going on? And they slide a piece of paper over to me. It's a printout of a Facebook post by Jim, made about a week ago. The post reads something along the lines of, "I am so sick of Dip's lectures, they are pointless, we never learn anything, and I might just punch him in the face." I raise my eyebrows at the suits watching me. They slide another printout over with a comment I made on it, circled in red. My comment on that status was roughly, "Great idea, Jim. Posting threats to assault a lecturer on Facebook. Why not go the whole way and say you want to kill him? Lay out a plan to dispose of the body and everything, you idiot." I look up at the suits across the desk. "Please explain these comments," they ask. Dip leans forward in his chair, glaring at me. "They are exactly what I wrote," I say. I'm pointing out to Jim in a sarcastic tone that making threats to assault people isn't a great idea, especially in writing. "Bullcrap!" Dip shouts, interrupting the suits conducting this interrogation as I begin to reply. He grabs the chair of one of them and pulls it back, saying, "Move!" and takes their place at the interview table. The other person in the corner looks alarmed, and I notice that she has been making notes the whole time but has now stopped. "You're planning to kill me?" Dip growls. "You and your little jerk friend? I don't take threats like this lightly." Dip's face is red with rage and he looks like he's on the brink of losing his self-control completely. I can't help it. I laugh. The sheer ridiculousness of the situation is hilarious. Dip slams his palm down on a desk and roars at me to stop laughing. "Listen, you little punk. How would you like it if I threatened to kill you? I've started keeping a baseball bat in my office just in case one of you comes around with ideas. I feel genuinely under threat by you due to your comments." I'm 5'9" and back then about 150 pounds. He could bench press me with one arm. "Maybe I'd take it with me for a walk one day after lectures. You live in student halls block X, don't you? Maybe we could find some ways to adjust your attitude." Well, that starts to get me angry, and when I get angry I tend to let my mouth run away with it. I didn't respond initially, then I look past him to the lady in the corner and say, "Hi, are you taking minutes for this official disciplinary interview?" She nods and I say, "Great. I just noticed you'd stopped when Dip took a place at the table. Could you please record his actions and Dip's threats to assault and kill me word for word? As well as the fact that he had just disclosed he keeps a baseball bat in his office to assault students with?" Dip's glare at me again and begins to speak. I ignore him and pull a copy of the university disciplinary procedure out of my bag, on loan from the student library. Turning to the other suit still at the table, "Where is he here? According to these, any complaints should be resolved by staff members who are independent of either party. Please, could you ask him to leave?" "That's it!" Dip shouts. "You're failing my course. If this was America, I'd have you arrested." "That's nice," I reply, "but you can't do that." All I've done is challenge another student in a jokey manner over comments they posted on a social media page. I haven't done anything wrong. I look back to the other suit and I say, "Could you explain to me where these printouts have come from and why I was not given sufficient notice of this meeting to arrange for a student union representative to attend with me?" The printouts clearly had the name of Dip's girlfriend, another lecturer in the department visible. She's obviously been searching the Facebook pages of students in Dip's classes, which is against university policy, and showed Dip what she found. The woman in the corner has stopped writing again. I ask her to record those questions as well. She does so reluctantly. The suit that was removed from the table puts a hand on Dip's shoulder and tells him, "You should go," he says, and Dip stands up and storms out, slamming the door. The suits whisper to each other for a minute, look at me and say, "You can go. We will not be pursuing this any further on this occasion, but you will be getting a warning." That's ridiculous, I say, but they won't budge. "Please send me a copy of the minutes," I ask cheerily as I'm going out of the door. I wasn't going to let this go. The revenge. Thoroughly pissed off after this, I decided to get my own back and head up to the dean's office to submit the exact same complaint against Dip that he tried against me. Let's see how he likes the university complaints procedure. I fill in all the paperwork, give a statement, and I'm asked what sort of resolution I'd like. I go for what will hurt Dip's pride the most, a public apology to me in front of the class. I get told that I will be advised of the result in due course. A week or two goes by and I don't hear anything. Then one day there is a different lecturer teaching Dip's class. We all look around as she walks in. I am sorry to tell you, she says, that Dip is no longer employed by this university. I will be filling in for him until the end of the semester. Excited murmurs fill the lecture hall. This is the best thing that has happened on this course all year. A day or two later I get a letter from the university and it says that they have terminated Dip's employment due to the complaint from me and testimony from other students. It seems like I was just the latest in a long line of formal complaints against them. They have also referred the matter to the police, who may be in touch with me in due course due to the threats. The letter also went on to say that due to the potential risk he posed to the students, the university had also withdrawn their sponsorship of his work visa and that he no longer had a reason to remain in the UK and will be returning to America within a week. So I should not feel under threats. I was to report any further contact with him and would have the warning removed from my record. A friend in the department also told me that he and his girlfriend had a shouting match down the corridor when she found out what he had done and that he'd been sacked, and she left him. I do feel a little bad for him.